Welcome, everyone. Let's talk a little bit about our emotional wellness in addition to stress management. And I usually talk about these together because they go hand in hand. One typically relates to another. And let me start this off with this Bible verse. Philippians 4:6-7 says, "Be anxious for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. And the peace of God, which passes all understanding, shall keep your hearts and minds through Christ Jesus." And when we're thinking about our emotional wellness and how stress affects our emotions, it's important to really kind of find that place where we can dwell. And this is where spiritual wellness comes in as an important part of our overall health and wellness, because we have something to reflect on that's going to give us peace, that's going to give us comfort, that's going to relax us and bring us back to a state of calmness so we're thinking rationally. When our emotions and our stress are out of control, we are irrational thinkers. So what are you feeling right now? What way are you thinking as you are entering into this class, as you're in school, as you have work, as you have family, as all the issues that we're experiencing on a regular basis? How do you handle those things, and how do they affect your overall emotions? I want to give you an emotional wellness assessment. And so I'm going to ask you to respond to a few statements based on the point system. Give yourself 3 if you can say almost always to the statement, 2 if you say sometimes, 1 if you say seldom, and 0 almost never. So take a pencil and paper out and just begin to write down these numbers, and I'll have you total them up at the end. So number 1, you're able to develop and maintain close relationships. So there's 2 things going on here. Not only are you able to develop close relationships, but you're able to maintain those as well. Think about, are you always able to do that? Sometimes, seldom, or never. If you have a lot of associates that you typically interact with, but for whatever reason you haven't talked to them in a while, you haven't maintained those close relationships. So this refers to your close friends or people that you consistently engage in discussion with, that you're concerned about on a regular basis. So developing and maintaining close relationships. Number 2, I accept the responsibility for my actions. Think closely and carefully before you give yourself a number rating for this. Do you really take responsibility? Do you find yourself really kind of putting the blame on others, or finding ways in which you are not accepting responsibilities for your actions, depending upon what those actions are? So think about that carefully. I see challenge or change as opportunities for growth. A lot of time people will see, and these are stressful situations, but people will see these as that stressful time and not necessarily look at the learning benefits and change or challenges. Number 4, I feel I have considerable control over my life. Do you almost always think that you are in control, you are responsible, you are accountable for everything that goes on in your life? Or do you think there's some forces out there that are just really out to get you? Do you think that other things happen for a reason that you really are not in control of? Number 5, I'm able to laugh at myself. Having a sense of humor is a huge therapeutic experience. It has so many health benefits related to just laughing. So many health related benefits, and it's important that we learn how to do that if we can't already. 6, I feel good about myself. That includes the way you look, how you behave, how you act, whether it be with your close relationships or in public in general. You feel good about yourself. 7, you're able to cope with stress and tension. And that means that you do recognize things that are going to be stressful, and you do have some stress management plan in place to address those things. 8, I recognize my flaws and learn from my mistakes. We all have flaws. We all have those areas in our life that we know we can improve on. But do you recognize those, and do you try to learn from the mistakes you've made, or do you try to improve those flaws that you have? Almost always give yourself a 3, sometimes 2, seldom 0, seldom 1, and never 0. Number 9, I'm able to recognize and express my feelings. Sometimes when we are going through a particular emotional state, we want to hold those things in. We don't want others to know that we're struggling. And it's typically opposite when we're experiencing something wonderful. We want others to share in that, but for some reason, for the most part, when we're feeling sad or depressed, our emotions are out of control, we want to pull ourselves away from everyone else. So are you able to recognize and express your feelings freely and openly? And then, do you experience joy in your life? Do you genuinely believe you have a sense of joy in your life on a regular basis? So give yourself a rating for each one of these and then total those up. As we look at the totals and the outcome, if you've given yourself anywhere from 25 to 30 points for those statements, you're considered to have excellent strength in the emotional wellness dimension. 19 to 24, there's some room for improvement, and 0 to 18 means you're dangerously low. Well, what does that mean for us? Well, once again, this is not something that's written in stone to say that if you're dangerously low in this area based on this little self-assessment that you're doomed. No, it's just a way to recognize, well, maybe I do have more flaws than I didn't think I have, and I need to start addressing those things. So when we're thinking about emotional wellness, it's difficult to really get a grasp on this because it's so many things going on that affects our emotions. Emotional wellness includes how our feelings, thoughts, and attitudes interact, how one contributes to the other and the other, and how that is manifested in our behavior, in our words, in our language. So it's an interaction of those things, and it's an awareness that those factors can influence the choices and decisions that you make. And so not only being aware of your feelings, being aware of the situations that are going to cause you to feel uncomfortable or cause you to feel angry or cause you to feel any way, and recognizing that you are going to make a decision based on those emotions. It's important to have. That's a good sense of emotional wellness when you're able to recognize that. Oftentimes it happens so quickly that we tend to act before we speak or before we think about things. Our emotional wellness also includes our personal outlook, our attitude, how we relate to other people, how we relate to different situations as well. And because it's so encompassing, it's very difficult to really understand and recognize that our emotions are going to have these huge impacts on our overall wellness. Emotional wellness is also comfort with and acceptance of your full range of feelings, knowing all those things that you want to avoid, that you need to avoid. For example, sirens. When you're driving your car and you see the blue and red flashing lights behind you, that's going to elicit a particular type of emotion. If you have kids, your baby's crying, that's going to elicit a different type of emotion. Sometimes silence is going to elicit a different type of emotion. People you see, experiences you've had with them, all of those things, everything that you experience is going to bring up a particular type of emotion. Recognizing that and recognizing that your behavior, your actions, the outcomes, whether it be positive or negative, is going to be determined by some of those emotions. And so all of those things working together is considered your overall emotional wellness. And so years ago, philosophers tried to make some sense of this, and Goleman's probably one of the leading authors, philosophers, and researchers on this whole issue of emotions. He developed this emotional intelligence, and this is the ability to not only be aware of, but also to be able to control and express your emotions. A good sense of emotional intelligence is in interviews. For example, if you're interviewing for a new job, being able to read the interviewers, understand the questions that they're asking, how they're asking the questions, their mannerisms, and being able to respond in a way that's going to give them a sense of confidence or a sense of failure. All those things that take place in that type of situation that are high stress situations, if you are able to read those individuals in the room and you're able to change your emotional state, change your responses, change your body language to convey a different message, that's part of emotional intelligence. So it's being aware of your personal feelings. It's understanding the connection between those feelings and the thoughts that you have and the actions as well that are related to that. It's an awareness that your feelings can influence your decision. If you start to if you're one of those individuals that say I just respond and then I ask for apologies later if I say something or do something that's hurtful, that's not good emotional intelligence. Good emotional intelligence is when you are able to recognize I'm getting angry, I'm getting frustrated, or I'm being happy, I'm being sad, and I know whatever I say next is based on that, and it can be hurtful, it can be harmful. That is part of good emotional intelligence. Seeking and understanding the outcomes of a particular decision that you make and understanding how it relates to your emotional state. And also taking personal responsibility for the things that you say and do. You can recognize that your actions, the words that you say, the things that you do are directly related to your emotions, but you also need to accept the responsibility regardless of whether it's a consequence or whether it's a benefit at the end of that. And then being able to follow through on your commitments. In other words, being honest, saying what you mean and meaning what you say. Those are all components of having good emotional intelligence, and there are signs of someone who is demonstrating good emotional wellness. Now, there is a difference between your feelings and your emotions, although they kind of go hand in hand. Your feelings deal with the senses, things that you can experience immediately, the sense of hearing, the taste, sight, smell, touch. All of those things are rooted deeply in your belief system. And so when you have these feelings, when you experience something, when you hear something, when you taste something, those things are going to trigger some type of emotional response. Your emotions are a response to the feelings that you're having. And so your emotions can be a physical response, it can be a verbal response. They can change from time to time, from period to period, from situation to situation. They're based on life experiences and the events that occurred in your life. And so based on your feelings, your emotions are going to be something that is observable. We can't always observe your feelings, but we can observe your emotions. And so understanding that your feelings are yours, they're internal, based on the senses that you have, and your emotions are kind of that outward expression of that. Now, with emotional wellness, it's important that we understand how we can spiral out of control and some of the negative outcomes if we are not developing good emotional wellness habits. It's the sense of depression. It's very easy to sink into the sense of depression. If you know someone who is considered clinically depressed, you realize the difficulty it is in trying to bring someone out of that sense or that state of depression. And it's that deep, strong feeling of helplessness or hopelessness, and both of them sometimes go hand in hand. Individuals start to withdraw. They feel no energy. They have this loss of interest. They don't want to do anything. They just kind of want to sulk individually. The appetite changes. Sometimes individuals who are depressed will not eat. Sometimes they will overeat. And so we have, one of these extremes. Difficulty sleeping or going long periods of sleeping. Irritability, short fuses, restlessness, zero energy. All of these things are signs of depression. And sometimes we say, well, you know what, I experienced that also. But for someone who genuinely suffers from depression, these things can be life-altering. They will have a huge impact on your life, not only your life, but the life of those around you as well. And so it's important to understand how our feelings can relate to our emotions and how our emotions can be negative in the sense of leading us into depression, and trying to find that healthy balance where we recognize those signs and we try to pull someone out of that sense and emphasize and celebrate over the smallest joys, the smallest exciting things that occur in someone's life, rather than having the few sad or sorrowful events to seem to overshadow everything positive, everything good. And this is when we start to focus on the blessings that we have. It's easy to recognize our flaws. It's easy to recognize our failures and to kind of dwell on those things. And in doing so, we tend to neglect that we are, regardless, tremendously blessed. And so trying to focus on that can help someone who's struggling with depression, but that is definitely a negative emotional state. Also, a feeling of guilt. And that is once you have this sense of guilt that everything is your fault. You're blaming yourself for everything. It's a low self-worth. Using those statements like I should have done this or I should not have done that. I should have taken action or I shouldn't have done this type of action, or not taking any action at all. All of those things are signs of someone who's suffering from this extreme sense of guilt, and that's also an emotional state. And then we have anxiety. And anxiety, there's a lot that goes on within anxiety. People who have anxiety have this sense of suffering. There's a crisis at a particular moment, and that crisis is looked at as a threat. It's something to be feared. It's a sense of tension, hesitancy, apprehension. All of those things are part of an emotional state of anxiety. Now, there's two different types of anxiety. There's trait, and then there's state anxiety. Someone who has trait anxiety, it's easy to see how that is going to spiral them down into a sense of guilt and even depression, because trait anxiety is something that is ongoing. It's someone who always has this sense of fear or threat, of hesitancy, and there's apprehension. And so it's more rooted internally. State anxiety is dependent upon a particular situation. You may have a test, a final in this class, for example, can be a sense of anxiety for some people, especially if you didn't study or you don't think you're prepared for it. That is situational. That's considered state anxiety, but trait anxiety is ongoing. And most individuals who have trait anxiety tend to focus on the worst possible outcome in any given situation. And it's generally related to stressful events, negative thoughts, negative experiences that are similar to any type of situation. And so going into a particular area that has had in the past a history of negativity related to it can be extreme, a sense of anxiety for individuals. And so understanding that those are different emotional states as well, trying to avoid those areas that are going to increase that anxiety. We also have hostility, and that is an inclusion of any type of negative approach to people, to other people. It can include just the thought of being abusive or hurtful to them. It can be an action. It can just be words. But hostility is just rooted in anger and frustration, and is definitely damaging to relationships. And so we see how hostility, being an emotional state, affects our social wellness. It can affect our physical wellness, because individuals who typically have this extreme sense of hostility on a regular basis also have an increased heart rate, which can increase their possibility of heart attack or chronic heart disease. And so there's a direct correlation, a direct link between all of these different dimensions of wellness. So it's important that we recognize that. So once again, we experience a balance between all of them. Then we have individuals who have this emotional state of pessimism. You may know some individuals who are consistently looking at things in a negative way. And if you have a strong pessimistic outlook, it means that regardless of what happens, you are always looking at the negative. You don't think things are going to change. You don't think things are going to get better. The negatives are always going to outweigh the positives. It's always the worst case scenario. Individuals who are pessimistic also seem to accept blame and responsibility. So we see this connection between the other emotional states as well. And so an outlook of progression of defeat through negative generalizations is another way of saying someone is pessimistic, or who has a strong sense of pessimism. And this can be trait or state as well. It can be based on a particular situation. If you've experienced test taking and you think you have test anxiety and you've always done poorly on tests, then any type of test is going to give you a pessimistic outlook. Oh, I don't think I'm going to do well on this test. I've never done well on tests. Or it can be something that's ongoing, that's more rooted in all of your experiences, that makes up who you are. And that once again goes back to influencing a sense of depression, a sense of guilt as well. So how do we pull someone out of this, or how do we prevent ourselves from falling into some of those negative emotional states? Well, first of all, we need to make sure that those individuals we are surrounding ourselves with are individuals who are going to help us improve our own lifestyle. They're going to lift us up. They're going to edify us. They're going to be positive to us and with us. They're going to encourage us. They're going to tell us like it is, but do so in a way that love abounds. And so it's people who genuinely care about our overall wellness. We need to start making more connections and more relationships that way. Exercise. There are definitely positive relationships or correlations between exercise and our emotional state. We know the release of endorphins will increase our mood and our outlook. Looking for those things that make us happy and trying to engage in joyous activities and occasions. Being able to plan and organize ourselves, follow through on our responsibilities. Another tough one is, a lot of people seem to struggle with is accepting constructive criticism. Anyone who says anything to us that seems to be negative, it's hurtful, and it can be extremely devastating to individuals. Rather than looking at it from a hurtful perspective as if someone's really trying to bring us down, we need to try to flip that around and look at it as something that is going to make us better. improve our overall outlook, our state, whatever it is that we're experiencing, and look at it as constructive criticism rather than something that's negative. Being aware of our feelings, going back to that whole sense of emotional intelligence and recognizing those situations, those individuals, the things that we say, hear, do, how those are going to relate to our emotions and how our actions are going to relate to that as well. Being aware of that so that we can avoid those situations, those people, those things that we know are going to cause us stress and give us some sense of negative emotions. And then knowing when to say no, trying not to take on too much responsibilities, and knowing when to tell people, you know what, I have other things going on. And sometimes we look at this from a different perspective. We say, you know what, I'm a people pleaser. I love to please other people. I like to make people happy. And so I will sacrifice my own happiness and joy for that. That's not good. That's not positive. That's not constructive to us as well. That doesn't contribute to our overall health and wellness. And so we need to understand how to balance our responsibilities and not take on additional things as well. Also, trying to approach life optimistically. Easier said than done, but it's something that we need to try to work on a regular basis, focusing on those positives, focusing on those goods, celebrating the joys of life, no matter how small they are. Also, being able to share our feelings openly and freely, being able to express our emotions, tell people how we feel, let people know how we feel, and being accepting of others when they want to help us out. Also, accept and adjust to the life changes that we experience on a regular basis, rather than looking at things as stressful situations or inconveniences that are really going to bother us. We need to recognize that those things are going to occur in life regardless, and we need to be mentally and emotionally ready for those changes to occur so that they don't become detrimental to our overall health and wellness. Develop stress management techniques. Make a list of things that we know will help us to overcome stressful situations. Once we have that list, we can start picking and choosing from it, whether it be finding some quiet time, chewing gum, listening to a particular type of music, exercising, anything that we can do that we know is going to minimize the stress in our lives or just give us an opportunity to get away. Write those things down so that we have a list of things that we know that we can do. And then try to just enjoy life. Try to recognize that we know life is tough. Life will have its disappointments. There will be challenges. There will be troubles. There will be trials and tribulations. But once again, recognizing that we are blessed, recognizing the things that we do have that others may not have, and just trying to enjoy life and just looking at life as a blessing in itself is part of improving our overall emotional wellness. So these are some of the things that relate to emotional wellness itself. I'm gonna split up emotional wellness and stress management in two different videos. And so in the next video, we'll address a little bit more about stress.